My name is Kevin Martin, and I'm a former UT Austin admissions counselor. In this video today, I want to share some tips and advice for freshmen and sophomores in high school. I understand that many families want to get a head start on the college application process, but I received many more messages since COVID from middle school and early high school, and even sometimes elementary parents about tips and advice for their children. But I almost never work with students before their junior year because I don't want to be in the business of telling teenagers how to live their lives or what to do or what not to do. Or I also don't want to tell parents how to raise their children. It's a little bit awkward. My clients come to me toward the end of their junior year and the beginning of senior year already having strong grades in APs, strong SATs, and great extracurriculars, and I help them cross the application finish line. In most instances, I don't recommend hiring an independent admissions counselor for students younger than junior year. Honestly, I question the value they add, and whatever application checklists they might provide are advice you can freely find and available on Google or even ChatGPT. Also, information that your high school counseling staff often provides. And so I recognize that the college admissions arms race means that families must start planning earlier and earlier. But you can figure out things like your course schedule or summer programs from free resources or parent social media groups. For younger students, your money and time is better spent on SAT preparation. The most important aspects of college applications are the college list and the essays, but these concerns aren't really relevant until the earliest spring of your junior year. So, if you're a younger student, how should you prepare for your eventual college applications? There honestly isn't a ton of advice or secret tips, but you can consider these 5 pieces of advice around grades, the SAT, the resume, summer programs, and college visits. First, and I know you hear this at home all the time, but you should try and earn the highest grades in the most rigorous courses offered at your school. UT and most universities only look at the transcript at the end of your junior year. So if you make mediocre grades as a freshman, it can be really difficult to play catch up. And I want to address a related theme, a bit of a tangent here, but one increasingly popular trend is for families to hire math acceleration consultants and math tutors. And I honestly don't understand how the logistics of this works because I'm not a specialist in this field, but families will test out of or take summer school classes to complete pre-algebra, algebra 1, or geometry much earlier than usual. Because the idea is for these consultants and families, they want to take pre-cal as a freshman and calculus AB as a sophomore. So that positions the student to take calculus BC as a junior, or even sets them up for more advanced math classes like multivariable calculus, linear algebra, or differential equations, which are usually at a community college or offered in dual credit. I don't necessarily recommend this accelerated math pathway. There are serious concerns about a student's math preparedness, and unlike reading or phonics, research suggests that there are adolescent development windows for when teaching pre-algebra and geometry is appropriate, which is typically why these concepts aren't usually introduced in elementary school or maybe the earliest in 6th grade. Even so, math and engineering professors at top universities report that many of their students enroll without being able to operate basic functions. And it could be because they've rushed through those classes early on in their high school career. Particularly in the era of ChatGPT, it's even easier to game the system. So the point of school is to impart essential skills to learn how to think and prepare for the future, rather than just seeing it as stepping stones to walk over and trying to complete your assignments as quickly as possible. It also doesn't necessarily help your admissions chances to take advanced math early on. If you're applying for a STEM major, universities merely want to see that you've completed the equivalent of calculus AB. So rushing through your math sequence might have unintended consequences down the road. Similarly, students sometimes take core curriculum classes like health, speech, or their social studies courses over the summer, and this can free up space to take honors or AP electives, which could boost your class rank, especially after that junior year. This could be a good idea because it completes required courses that the student may not be interested in taking and frees them up for additional coursework or maybe for some of those double block courses like band or athletics. The second piece of advice is to do well on the official SAT and ACT, which is pretty obvious. But there's a few nuances here. And I'm not a test prep specialist or a test counselor, so Those sorts of questions, how to get a good score, are outside of the scope of my knowledge and content. But I can say that these concerns around SAT and ACT become relevant sophomore year and also junior year. So ideally, you should have the SAT completed and your target score achieved before your senior year begins. I should say that the PSAT isn't especially important. Some lesser selective universities will offer scholarships for National Merit semifinalist or finalist, but these are not typically the sorts of desirable top 50 universities like UT Austin that students want to enroll or the sorts of families that are emailing me. UT doesn't offer anything for national merit, and so at UT, it's completely irrelevant. You just want to avoid taking your SAT, ACT deep into senior year because that is almost always going to be suboptimal and adding more stress to an already stressful application period and senior year classes. Third, especially if you want a STEM or a business major, it's essential to have related experiences on the resume. This could mean joining conventional extracurriculars like DECA in the case of business, HOSA for science majors, or robotics for prospective engineers. For STEM or business majors at UT and top 50 universities, it isn't enough to be academically excellent with well rounded extracurriculars. A decade ago, or when your parents applied, it was, but the competition landscape has shifted dramatically, especially since COVID. So, you must be able to demonstrate interest in your preferred major. And since I'm not in the business of telling students how they should or shouldn't spend their time, I can't comment much more on this other than to say that students should spend their time in ways that interest them and not waste their time grinding away in activities or volunteering that they don't enjoy doing. It isn't worth the potential burnout or conflict with your family to continue activities that take away from your well being or at the cost of doing things you prefer. However, although you need to build a strong resume, it isn't worth becoming a slave to college admissions incentives. Next, a related theme is to make the most of your summers. I have a PDF and also a spreadsheet of summer experiences, so if you want those, you can email me. I have hundreds of different programs I've identified with the help of some other students. And I want to give us some background that summer programs weren't really a thing when I worked in UT admissions in the early 2010s. Although that was the period when families would send their students to remote countries to do volunteering. And although these programs have mostly fallen out of favor, and especially since COVID, there's sort of a cottage industry of thousands of different engineering, business, medical, and leadership programs that have sprung up. Some of these are genuinely highly reputable, and they're associated directly with institutions that are free or cheap, or there's even some that will provide stipends, especially if you come from a low income or first generation college background. Other programs, however, charge exorbitant fees and they add questionable value. Nevertheless, summer programs are a great way to explore your interest, supplement your school curriculum, and help you build your resume. They also help you to get to know a university more deeply than if you just took a half day official campus visit. Might also help you to decide whether to apply binding early decisions somewhere. And I assist my high school junior clients on these summer program applications because a lot of them also require essays. One word of caution is that since there's so many more programs than a generation ago, private businesses are taking advantage of anxious families in this college admissions arms race by charging extremely high fees for programs that may not be reputable. And so, one way that they trick families is they will like rent building and classroom space at prestigious universities. Then they advertise their programs as like at Yale or at Harvard or at Princeton, but the program isn't sponsored by or affiliated with those universities, but like merely located inside of them. So in general, you should be suspicious of programs that charge more than like $5,000 per week tuition and housing. And I've even seen some that charge as much as $15,000 for a week-long program, which is more than 3 full semesters of UT Austin tuition. So just be a savvy consumer when selecting those programs. And I also help my junior clients kind of sort out which ones might be reputable or not. Fifth and finally, let's discuss college visits. I will make a longer video on this topic, but generally speaking, I am not a fan of what I call pre acceptance visits. Pre acceptance visits tend to be the sort of whirlwind trips that families take in the summers after their sophomore or junior year by visiting as many campuses as possible. And these can have some limited benefits, particularly If a student is considering to apply binding early decision somewhere, UT doesn't offer binding ED, and they also don't consider demonstrated interest. So, if you already know you want to apply to UT and you know roughly which major you want, visiting campus probably isn't helpful. If you come from a highly educated, American born family, you're likely already familiar with many colleges. However, visits can be helpful for families who are unfamiliar with American universities or if they're educated in another country. And so, visiting campuses can help develop college literacy and might be beneficial before you apply. Official visits tend to be like these sales pitches where they're persuading you to apply or maybe even enroll. And at UT, most visiting families don't need any persuading since it's the dream school for many students. Consequently, pre-acceptance college visits sometimes lead to like really irrational enrollment decisions, and they depend on things like the weather or the tour guide or like what you had for lunch or other kind of arbitrary or emotional factors. And so the only way that visits are useful is to decide whether to apply or not. But since applications only cost you a little bit of time and money, you don't need to potentially spend thousands of dollars to visit a campus before you gain admission. So my advice, just apply, see if you get in, and then visit later to decide if you want to enroll, especially if it's one of your top choice schools. I find that post acceptance visits are much more helpful. During the spring of senior year, once you've received most or all of your decisions, I find it's more productive to visit campus once you know your major. If you've got into honors programs, to better understand the total cost of attendance or financial aid, questions about summer orientation, housing, and so on. And so you can ask much more concrete questions on these post admissions visits compared to those pre acceptance college visits that families tend to take over the summer. These visits can help you decide where to enroll, especially if you're considering going to an expensive out of state or private university. So, for most families with younger students, I wouldn't go out of your way to visit UT or really any other campus. I hope you found these 5 tips for younger students helpful. Message me at kevin@texadmissions.com with any questions, and you're also welcome to complete the questionnaire in the information section of this video for a free admissions consultation by email. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.